free agency has changed a lot.
Mhm.
We made our first mock draft prior to the combine, prior
Mhm.
to free agency. So there's a lot of stuff that has changed. There's a lot of stuff we've seen in players that could potentially raise their draft stock. Now, the
Right.
combine doesn't raise somebody's draft stock in multiple rounds. Like, you don't take a test and get an A on it if you're failing a class and automatically jump up to an A, right?
Right.
It
Right.
takes a lot of A's to get back to that A that you have once had before you
Right.
failed
Right.
that test. It's the same in football. If somebody is in the 7th round, they're not going to automatically have a ball out combine and go up to the first round. It takes time. Now, if you're in late first round or early second round and you ball out in the combine, you might move up to the first round or early first round. That can happen. But a lot of people are saying, like, who broke the combine record for the
Yeah.
40,
Xavier.
Xavier
Worthy.
Worthy
Xavier Worthy.
is going to be in the first round. Now, you can't teach speed, but I think
I
his
don't necessarily.
counterpart is
I don't
better.
know if the
I think
film.
his
I don't know if the
counterpart is
film.
better.
I don't know if the film backs up the first round.
I
The first round. Draft grade and whatnot. The film does not necessarily back up, and the tape. I mean, okay, speed kills, and you can't teach speed.
you can't.
But we do have to acknowledge the aspect of you got to have film that backs up what it is, and we're so enamored with the numbers, that people post at the combines, and this is that and the other. But the reality of it is, yeah, but we have to see them in actual game, like game speed, game and game situation. That's one of the things that gets me is that a lot of people get so caught up in, okay, well, they posted these numbers and so forth and whatnot. Test good, that's great, but does your film back up what it is that you're putting out there? And sometimes there's some people that actually are really good at testing, and there's some people that aren't good at testing. But the film, men lie, women lie. The film doesn't.
Now, CJ Stroud was awful at his test, and that's why he didn't get number 1 overall. That's why the Panthers didn't want to choose him. They didn't think he had the football IQ to be their franchise quarterback. And then guess what? He gets drafted number 2 overall, and what does he do? Take his team to the playoffs.
Takes the teams to the playoffs, rookie of the year. And he's in such a great situation because that Houston team, they have such a young nucleus and they have so much young talent with great coaching. They're just going to build and build and build. They have the opportunity to again compete for the AFC South division. And again, CJ Stroud, he is going to be in the talk for NFL MVP pretty soon. We have to acknowledge his talent and where he's at with D'Amico Ryans, with all of that talent that's there. This team is going to be eventually. This team is going to be competing for a Super Bowl. So we got to acknowledge that.
So let's go into my original scenario I had planned out for the number 1 overall pick. Chicago Bears before the combine had a lot of pieces they had before in the prior year. Okay. It was a decision if they wanted to roll with Justin Fields or they wanted to start fresh, start new. Well, they started doing a lot to build around a quarterback, and we didn't know who it was going to be yet. They started making moves. Were they going to build around Justin Fields like they should have in the first place, or were they going to build around a new quarterback and have him in the best situation possible for the first number 1 overall pick? We see that Justin Fields gets traded. So originally, I had the Falcons trading up to the number 1 overall pick, and they were going to get Caleb Williams because they hadn't signed a quarterback. Well, they signed Kirk Cousins, right? So Chicago has basically put all of their eggs in the basket saying, hey, we're going to draft a quarterback at number 1, probably Caleb Williams. So my original pick was Caleb Williams to the Falcons. And my new pick for the number 1 overall pick in the 2024 NFL draft, the Chicago Bears will stick with Caleb Williams. They have traded for Keenan Allen, somebody that had 1,200 yards receiving last year. He's 31. He's on the wrong side of 30, but he's still productive. And we'll get into how they can find a replacement for their wide receivers. They're going to keep DJ Moore. He had a productive season. They're building around Caleb Williams so perfectly right now that they want this to be the best possible situation a number 1 overall pick has ever gotten into, and I think they're doing a very good job of it.
I like it. Let's go. Come on, cook. Let's get some gravy.
Well, let's go to the number 2. Now,
All right.
the Commanders are on the clock. You have somebody. Do you remember who the OC for the Commanders was last season?
Eric Bieniemy was the OC for the Commanders last year.
Okay, now correct me if I'm wrong, Nate, but once an offensive coordinator has established an offense for a couple years and they get fired or released or let go or they part ways, whatever happens, there is still that offense that is still going to be lingering into the next season. Would you agree with that?
Yes, very much.
Okay. Well, who is here to pick up the pieces of that Eric Bieniemy offense? Let me rephrase that. Who did the Commanders sign to replace Eric Bieniemy? Do you remember? Now, and I'll answer that question myself if you can't answer it for me. They signed somebody who is an expert in Heisman's. Now, my original pick is Jayden Daniels.
Yes.
For the Commanders. Now, you have Jayden Daniels, who just won a Heisman this past season. You just brought in a dude that has arguably produced the most Heismans out of anybody in college football. And who is that, Nate? Does it ring a bell yet? Is it coming to your memory? Who the Commanders have signed?
No, who
for the new OC?
Who they signed?
They decided to pick up Cliff Kingsbury after he had just been at USC with Caleb Williams, helped him in his Heisman year, and now he's going back. So, Heisman man, the guy who's producing all these Heisman, why can't he produce an NFL quarterback like Kyler Murray, who already won a Heisman? And I think he did a good job with Kyler Murray. So, my new pick, I'm sticking with Jayden Daniels.
All right, I like that.
Draft Jayden Daniels.
Okay. Who's number 3? New England's number 3, right? Are they 3 or 4?
Yeah, they are 3. Do you have anything to say on this?
I like it. I like this pick. I'm curious to see your number 3 pick right now because it can go in 2 different directions. So I'm curious to see how this goes.
So I have a little trade. I agree. Daniels in the Kingsbury offense is the best fit. That's why he will go number 2 overall. Now, Kingsbury was there before free agency, so that's why I like Daniels there. He stays. We'll get into some like trade scenarios in the 4th pick. Now, I did not want to add any trades to this. It's so difficult to try and predict what a team is thinking, how they view a prospect, if they're going to trade up. The Giants traded up like 2 spots to get like Deonte Banks last draft. 2 spots. And so it's very difficult to try and guess if somebody's going to move up 1 spot or 2 spots, or like I just can't do it. So I'm not going to do any picks. I did that first overall pick the last mock draft. So in my last mock draft, my number 3rd overall pick was Drake May. The Patriots, they trade Mac Jones. He's a backup for Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. They want to start over. They want to start fresh. Now, the Patriots need a quarterback. Mm-hmm. Do the Patriots trade back and get one of the later quarterbacks? I can't do that. There's no way you can do that. You can speak. I'm sorry. I don't want to cut you off.
I don't know. I don't see them doing that, but at that same time, this isn't like in my opinion, this isn't a really good quarterback draft. That's just my opinion.
I like it.
I like the talent that's coming out, but I mean, Drake May, if he's the guy and he's right there at the number 3 pick, you cannot pass that up unless the team is going to give you the house and so forth. But again, quarterback is the most important position on the team, and you have a new head coach. He has to establish, a new regime. You're going away from the greatest coach of all time and Bill Belichick. He has to go in and start. Jared has to go in and start, to carve out his own identity and what he's gotten playing for the New England Patriots. So I like this pick.
Well, this is my original pick. I ain't got to my new pick. My new pick, I'm sticking with Drake May. Drake, you picked the best available. Some people are saying he's the best quarterback in this draft class. I think Jayden Daniels is. If he's the best, the Patriots will think he's the best as well. Drake May stays. Jack was getting a little stressed with that pick. They picked Drake May. This is probably the most conservative pick in the draft, as in the Patriots if Jaden Daniels drops to 3, Caleb Williams, Drake May drops to 3, I think they will get a good quarterback either way. I think Drake May will be good. I'd love to see him sit behind somebody for a year, but that's just not possible with these top 3 picks. So I digress. Let's go into the next one. Now, originally had the Cardinals trade back with the Chicago Bears for the 4th overall pick. I'm saying the Cardinals keep the 4th overall pick. Now, there are talks that the Vikings traded for the Houston's 23rd overall pick in the first round. Yes. Now, there are talks that the Vikings see value in a certain quarterback that they want to trade up to the number 4 spot to make sure that they can get that quarterback that they so highly desire. Whether or not that happens, I don't know. Now, people are saying they desire J.J. McCarthy. When I get to the Vikings pick, I will tell you why J.J. McCarthy will not be a Minnesota Viking. But until we get there, okay, he said the Patriots could absolutely sit them for you.
Could I throw in a possible scenario?
Yeah, go ahead.
Nobody said anything about this, but a possible scenario is Kyler Murray being traded from Arizona.
Now we could see
possible.
We could see the Vikings going ahead and trading their number 11th overall pick for Kyler Murray. I could see that. I could see that they do that. There's a lot of trade scenarios, and I think if there's a trade scenario that's going to happen, the Cardinals are going to be the ones that make the trade happen. We've seen it in past drafts. They are still in rebuild mode. They are not content. They want more draft capital. They want to become the Oklahoma City Thunder of the NFL, and that's what they're going to do. So let's just say my original pick was Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Chicago Bears at number 4. Let's say the Cardinals keep the pick. Now, you don't need a quarterback. There's no sense in other than Kyler Murray not watching film and playing Call of Duty when the new Call of Duty game releases. There's not much terrible with Kyler Murray. I mean, Kyler Murray's good. I would take Kyler Murray in New Orleans. I would take him for Derek Carr in a heartbeat for New Orleans. And that's just my opinion. So let's keep Kyler Murray being Kyler Murray. His best wide receiver was Hollywood Brown last year. Let's give him something else. Let's stay with the new pick, Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Cardinals at number 4. Let's just keep that. Let's stay conservative.
Okay. I like that.
In there, you won't have to trade Kyler Murray. You'll keep him, and then you'll give him more numbers. And he was injured last year, so it's not like he was regressing any. So with the number 5 pick, and this is so interesting because I've watched a lot of stuff about this. Now, who did the Chargers decide to hire after they fired their last coach?
They hired Jim Harbaugh. Let's not say his name because Kenny might choke me.
Now, Jim Harbaugh is the new head coach to the Los Angeles now? Yeah, it's Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's think about this. He just won a national championship with what quarterback that is in this draft class?
J.J. McCarthy, but that'll be the stupidest move in his career if he ever did that.
That's not what I'm saying. He's got a quarterback. He's in salesman mode, Nate. This is what Jim Harbaugh is doing. He's going, look, if you want the best pure quarterback in this draft class, go ahead and take him. Trade from the number 5 spot. We will trade back with you. Acquire more draft capital, and you can have that best quarterback in that draft class. It's just a matter of if somebody will bite. Now, he's baiting the hook. He's reeling it out. He's casting it out. He's reeling in just a little bit, slowly but surely, and he's waiting for something to bite so he can just nag it out the water and catch it. But for the sake of this mock draft,
I see that. That's a more realistic trade right there. Somebody trading into the top 5 for if they wanted, say, a J.J. McCarthy, a quarterback hungry team. I can see them trading that pick away, and that would be a smart acquisition right there for Jim Harbaugh. You know, again, because you have a quarterback in Justin Herbert. You have one of the top 10 best quarterbacks in the league in Justin Herbert. That this was the number 5 pick. This can be some draft capital.
Now, I had Brock Bowers as my original pick, and in free agency, the Chargers are pretty content. They restructured Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa's contracts to keep them on the team. They released Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, but they have pretty good wide receivers behind them. Joshua Palmer isn't bad. And who they draft last year, Quentin Johnson, he's not bad. I actually got that right on my mind. I think it's like one of the 4 picks I got right in last
Yeah,
year's
he's
mock
from
draft.
TCU, if I'm not mistaken, right? Quentin.
I think so. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. TCU. You're right. So he's pretty content. I don't see him drafting a wide receiver at 5. Other than running back now, they signed Gus Edwards. They lost Austin Eckler. And their tight end, they signed Will Dissly. Is Will Dissly a starting tight end? Let's be for real. Is he a starting tight end in the NFL?
Can't necessarily say he is, but I can't say he isn't because, I mean, there's some guys that starting in the league where it's just like eyebrow raisers, but they fit with what their team needs and whatnot, so they produce. You know, they're in good situations. So we can't knock them.
So let's draft a tight end that you know can produce and one of the most interesting tight end prospects of all time. Let's go with Brock Bowers. Let's keep it for the new pick. Jim Harbaugh's pretty content. I
Okay.
think Will Dissly will be more of his blocking tight end, and Brock Bowers will be more of that receiver as you have just released Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Let's
Yes.
stick with Brock Bowers.
Okay.
So we go into the Giants. And originally, I had Joe Alt to the Giants. I was like, okay, well, they signed Daniel Jones for this amount of money. They want to protect him as best they can because he's their business, right? They put their money in Daniel Jones, so they don't want him to get injured. He's their business. They just want him to produce. They don't want to have another Kenny Golladay situation where they sign him for a whole bunch of money for a couple years and he only has 6 touchdowns in 3 or 4 seasons and a couple hundred yards. It's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I got to thinking. I said, wait a minute. You have Andrew Thomas, and then you have Evan Neal out of Bama. Those are your tackles right now, I think, for the Giants.
Mm-hmm.
Evan Neal is kind of lackluster. He's a little underwhelming for how high he was drafted, but he's still young. So I started thinking, I was like, maybe they stick with Evan Neal. Maybe they don't replace him just yet. So how can they further help out Daniel Jones? What position will further help out Daniel Jones, Nate?
I mean, if it's not an offensive lineman.
If it's not an offensive lineman, what is it?
I can say either a tight end or a running back. What you thinking?
And I can tell you, I'm thinking neither, Nate. I'm thinking a wide receiver. The Giants wide receiving core, let's be honest. What is it?
Lester, Sterling Shepard is their I think their leading receiver. No disrespect to him and his skill set and his talent, but they don't have a big name receiver on that team to really, that strikes fear into opposing teams and whatnot. And you just lost Saquon Barkley, so you got to figure it out. So let me see what that new pick is like.
But you're not about to reach for a running back. You're going to draft the most explosive player in this draft class. You're going to get your big name wide receiver, and you're going to draft Malik Nabers out of LSU.
I was waiting for Malik Nabers to come up,
and he's going to New York.
With the he's a dynamic player. He's a dynamic receiver. You know what? Him and Marvin Harrison are 1 and 1A. I mean the skill sets of both of these two players. They are pro ready. They're ready to come in and just really compete and learn the nuances of the game. I like this pick. I like this new pick. I mean, I did like the Joe Alt pick as far as wanting to protect your quarterback because Daniel Jones, he took a beating last year. But you just lost Saquon Barkley, who was your top playmaker and your top skill position on your team. You got to find somebody that can replace that talent right there. So I love it.
And so we get into our next pick. So the Titans, they draft Will Levis last year. They're looking like they're going to roll with them. Now, Originally, I had them kind of helping out Will Levis in Rome Odunze. And this was before free agency. Let's keep that clear. Now, what wide receiver did they just sign in free agency for about $90 million, Nate?
They just got a good – this is probably – Calvin Ridley is probably one of the best route runners that I've seen.
I love watching him. I hated him in college.
When I say this guy in and out of his breaks – it's like poetry watching him run routes. And he's very, very precise. He's again, his coaching at the University of Alabama, Amari Cooper, some of these receivers, again, when I say that came out of Alabama, can run every route on the route tree. And I just love watching Calvin Ridley.
And so you do not want to draft a rookie wide receiver to come in and kind of possibly, and I'm saying this a big maybe, go in and almost overshadow your $90 million wide receiver you just signed.
Yeah,
That's not a good move. You don't draft a wide receiver, excuse me, here. So you get somebody who can protect your young quarterback. You go ahead and take the top tackle prospect, Joe Alt out of Notre Dame, and
I
you
agree.
protect Will Levis.
I do. Okay.
And so we get to the 8th pick. And originally I had the Cardinals with this. Did I have the Cardinals? Falcons trade up. Chicago. Yeah, I had the Cardinals with this pick. And I had them picking Malik Neighbors because I was like, well, Kyler Murray needs weapons. It's the it's there, it's whatever. So we're saying the Falcons keep this pick. They don't trade up to number 1, and they go ahead and get the best available player. They signed Kirko to a whole bunch of money, and they're liking the weapons he's got in Atlanta. Let's
Yes.
go ahead and fix what else we've been looking for in Atlanta, and that's the defense. So
Defensive
you
side.
take the best. We've had all offensive players as first 7 picks. You take the best defensive player in this draft, and you go ahead and draft Dallas Turner,
I love
edge
it.
out of Alabama.
I love it. I love it. And now offense sells tickets. What does defense do?
They win championships.
Exactly. So again, and every team aspires to be a championship team. That's why you compete. That's why you do what you do in the offseason. You make the acquisitions you make in free agency. You draft how you draft because again, you're building a team to compete with the likes of the Kansas City Chiefs. You're building a team to unseat them from the top of the throne. And the best way to do it is from the defensive side because it's hard for a team to beat you if they can't score points.
Well, Chicago has this next pick, and so we're going from Atlanta to Chicago. And say we had to take a trip all the way from Atlanta to Chicago, but we couldn't afford a plane ticket, and we couldn't find a plane ticket. We just can't get a plane to get there, so we are resorted to driving. Nate, what are we going to need if we have to drive from Atlanta to Chicago?
Insurance.
We're going to need some good car insurance.
Here's to the grown-ups. Your car is now your office, stage, nursery. Sorry, Erie Insurance offers products that lots of other companies don't. That's a big deal, and it's a good deal, too. And with Erie, you get your own independent agent, not a giant corporate call center or some online robot. You meet with a real person, like this.
Your local Erie agent is Building Block Insurance Group. Get a quote today at 704-464-4544.
Erie Insurance.
And when you call Jeff Fortepney at 704-464-4544, go ahead and ask him who he would draft number 1 overall. And if it's Caleb Williams, I would say give him a pat on the back, but I don't like Caleb Williams Chicago. So
all right,
just,
you got okay.
So Nate, we're going to we're going to Chicago, right?
We're going to Chicago.
Chicago got a couple of draft capitals. It's the 9th overall pick. I kind of cut it in half with the ad.
All right.
So originally I had Chicago getting the best offensive player, in quotes, Caleb Williams. No, Marvin Harrison Jr. Actually, yeah, best offensive player and the best defensive player in this draft. Well, Dallas Turner's gone. And I was like, well, originally I had Jared Verse here because I said, well, Chicago wants to work on their defense, right? Chicago ended up having a top 5 defense second half of the season. Maybe they're content. Chicago is the type of team that if they're content, they're fine. They're not going to work on it until they see a problem pop up again. Chicago's not the type of team to fix the problem before it occurs. They're the type of team to fix it when the problem happens.
Well,
So
they better get it. They better get it together because Green Bay is coming. Detroit is coming. Minnesota is still a viable team. Okay, but Minnesota's still a team. If they can get a quarterback with what they have on that offensive side and whatnot, the NFC North is a competitive division. But I apologize. Go ahead. Let's go ahead and get to a Cook.
Now, the Chicago Bears are the type of team to not get their oil changed until 10 or 15,000 miles. Now, to put that into perspective, it is advised to get it around 3,000 to 5,000 miles to get
That's
it
right.
changed. Now, the Chicago Bears don't look into the future. Now, if you got your oil light on and your oil needs to be changed, okay, I can ride on it for a couple more days, couple more weeks, couple more months. They're not going to fix it. So they're not going to fix their defense with this pick. Okay, they're not going to fix their defense. They're going to continue to give Caleb Williams more weapons. And I actually talked to Bruce about this the other day. I said, look, if you had to choose, would you want a defensive player and offensive player with this pick? I love Caleb Williams. I want to give Caleb Williams everything.
Oh
So that was my best impression of a Chicago Bears fan. So with the new pick, they don't take a defensive player here. They go ahead and kind of wanting to replace Keenan Allen, who's on the wrong side of 30 after this season. They're going to draft Rome Odunze, wide receiver out of Washington. And this is what the Chicago Bears will do. Now, if they draft a defensive player right here, it will shock me. It will shock me.
I think I think it should be a defensive player.
I think it should too.
I think it should be a defensive player, somebody on the D line, or with somebody in a linebacker, depend on just who's out there. But I think you got to rebuild that defense, and that defense needs to be built because again, we're looking at the Detroit Lions and you're looking at the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love and Jared Goff, who you have to play twice a year. So, I mean, you got to prepare yourself for that. You got to have somebody in there that can actually give them problems. So, I don't necessarily agree with the pick, but okay, we're getting to the point where it's too pretty, where we want the offensive weapons and whatnot. But again, you need somebody on defense that's going to stop some things. So, again, Rome Odunze is one of the best 50-50 guys. Yes, he is. Yep, we got to take time. We can't just give all the bells and whistles on the offense. This is a team. And again, there's an offensive side and there's a defensive side. We got to address things on the defense. So that's just me,
Well, Nate, we're talking about the Chicago Bears. Let's be for real.
Yes,
they don't use logic. So if I'm using Chicago Bear logic, they'll pick an offensive player here. I think they should pick defense. But
Okay.
Let's go on to the next pick. Now, the Jets, Aaron Rodgers, 4 plays into the game, tears his Achilles. So my original pick was we're going to draft him a tackle to
Protect him.
make sure that's never going to happen again because he's not on the wrong side of 30. He's on the negative side of 30. The man's not even 30 anymore. So we're going to have to literally protect Aaron Rodgers. We need Aaron Rodgers to be fine. Let's keep it there. And I was like, well, I said Jared Verse goes number 9. I was like, well, if Jared Verse goes 9, Rome Odunze goes here. Well, I talked to Bruce, the Chicago Bears fan, how Chicago thinks they want an offensive player. They love Caleb Williams so much, they want to give him everything so they know he's not going to be bad.
What happened to Connor?
Did I just leave? Okay. I don't know what just happened. Okay. Excuse me. I don't know where I left off, but they don't want another back quarterback in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
But they picked Rome Odunze. So here, I'm saying you stick with what you had before. You keep Olu Fashanu. Let's stay with it. You got somebody who can protect your 40-year-old quarterback. Let's keep it there.
I love it. I love the pick. I love it. Oh, yeah. Let's go on.
Let's keep going.
Keep cooking.
Now, we have the Vikings. Oh, the Vikings are out. This is like one of my favorite picks. And I thought long and hard about these next picks, Nate. So if you disagree, you either really disagree with it or really agree with it. And we're going to see about these next 3 picks. Now, original pick, Latu out of UCLA. They lost Danielle Hunter, right, to free agency. They just ended up signing Jonathan Grenard. So they're okay in the defensive front. And Latu, he had kind of an underwhelming combine. So I don't know if he's even in the top 15 anymore. I don't have him in the top 15 anymore. I kind of having him drop a while. But you know that the Vikings do not re-sign Kirk Cousins. They are in need of a quarterback. But everybody's saying J.J. McCarthy, he's going to the Vikings. He's going to the Vikings. Mel Kiper, Daniel Jeremiah, all these guys, Yates, all these guys are saying JJ McCarthy is going to the Vikings. And although they may be well overqualified and their credentials exceed far beyond what I have been able to accomplish at this day and age, you can't bring JJ McCarthy to Minnesota. And I'm going to tell you why. If you bring JJ McCarthy to Minnesota, what does he do? He just got from handing the ball off 20 to 30 times a game in Michigan offense, going to win a national championship, having to throw the ball only 20 times a game, which is not seen in college and which is super low. And you're not going to put him in Minnesota. Minnesota has an air raid offense. Why do you draft somebody who has not proven that they can succeed in an air raid offense to the NFL? Why? It does not make sense. So let's draft the quarterback who can do that. Nate, let me ask you something. What Power 5 conference is the air raid offense most seen in?
Big 12.
Doesn't that A in Pac-12 stand for air raid?
Yeah.
So let's pick a Pac-12 quarterback that we know can be successful in our air raid offense. Let's go ahead and pick Bo Nix out of Oregon. And that's my pick for number 11 to the Minnesota Vikings. And you might not like it.
No.
But guess what? They pick somebody who knows an air raid offense.
Okay.
And they might not have to start. They don't have to start Bo right out the gates. You let him see what he can do in preseason. And if he's good enough, maybe. But you let him sit. It's fine. You just let him sit. And then you kind of bring him out the middle of the season like Will Levis. Next season, bam, he's your starter. Just like the Titans.
Okay. Let's go to the next pick. I don't agree with it, but let's go to the next pick.
You don't agree with it?
I don't agree with it, but let's go to the next pick.
I like this pick. I like it a lot. They don't draft JJ McCarthy. They draft an air raid quarterback. Now, you go to Bo Nix is awful. Bo Nix isn't bad. I don't think he's awful. But let's go to the next one. We go to Denver. Sean Payton. Sean Payton's country. Let's ride. Let's go. My original pick was JJ McCarthy. Now, there is a something that all these scouts and analysts are seeing in JJ McCarthy that Sean Payton saw months ago. Okay? And these guys are just now seeing it. Oh, JJ McCarthy's the best quarterback in this draft class. Oh, JJ McCarthy's this, JJ McCarthy's that. So Sean Payton go ahead and he sticks with his original intuition. He sticks with his gut, and he goes ahead and he drafts JJ McCarthy because he sees something in him that not everybody else sees, but are starting to see, and he makes JJ McCarthy the starter in Denver.
Okay. What's your next pick?
Oh, this next pick's fun too. Nate, you might disagree with this one too. Now, originally I had Byron Murphy out of Texas, and I don't. Did the Raiders sign a defensive?
They signed Christian Watson.
That's right. They signed Christian Watson. Thank you. I remember Clemson boy. They signed Christian Watson, so they don't need a D tackle. They just put a lot of money in their D tackle position. They put it in Christian Watson. Byron Murphy was kind of Sweat. Really, his counterpart did a lot better than him at the combine. He showed out. So think about it. You just signed Gardner Minshew. You don't sign him for a long-term deal. You don't want him to be your starter. You have Aiden O'Connell. That's your quarterback room in Las Vegas, okay? Look, they're not going to be your starters they're not going to be your starters forever. Aiden O'Connell, yeah, you said you saw stuff in him that could be a starter potential. Gardner Minshew, he's done stuff for teams that have been beneficial to those teams, but he hasn't gone that extra mile to become and solidify himself as a starter. I love Gardner Minshew. He's from Mississippi, so I'm not saying anything bad. I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible. So let's fix that, Nate. Now, we had 3 quarterbacks go 1, 2, and 3. We might have 3 quarterbacks go 11, 12, and 13. So the Raiders go ahead and draft Michael Penix Jr. out of Washington. And I love this. I love this so much because you have now established, and what I say about Caleb Williams in Chicago, you have now established what in Las Vegas? Healthy competition.
Okay.
You get Michael Penix. Hey, 3 quarterbacks in a room, that's not rare. That's pretty common. People usually have 3 quarterbacks. I love this pick so much, Nate. And I have yet to see somebody I think I was watching Daniel Jeremiah. I think he had Michael Penix going number 13, and I was like, wow, he agreed with me. Cool. That was awesome. But let's keep going. Now, originally, my Saints are up at number 14, and I to keep my heart happy, I just love Jared Verse. I've been saying it since the get-go. He's going to be a New Orleans Saint.
He's a good player.
I want him so bad in New Orleans, but you know how the New Orleans Saints think. We got to draft a tackle with our first pick. A tackle. We got to get an offensive tackle. No. Give me Jared Verse. Keep my little heart happy, and keep Jared Verse in New Orleans. My new pick is Jared Verse out of Florida State. I want him in New Orleans so bad that my mock draft is indicative that he stays in New Orleans. And originally, I had Jared Verse 9, Rome Odunze 10, and then Olu Fashanu 14. That might end up happening if Chicago is smart and picks a defensive player at number 9. And I just love him. And Jack loves him too. I just love him so much. And I want him in New Orleans so bad. Please be across from Chase Young. Cameron Jordan's old. He's on the wrong side of 32.
Oh my God.
We need a Cameron Jordan. We need a Cameron Jordan successor. And it's Jared Verse. Okay, now this next pick is originally the Colts are on the clock, right? They picked Terrion Arnold, and I was like, well, I like Quinion Mitchell, but is Quinion Mitchell the best cornerback in this draft? And I had a debate in my mind. I was like, oh, do I put Quinion Mitchell 15? Do I keep Terrion Arnold 15? What do I do? And I think what I'm going to do, Nate, for the 15th pick, Juju Brents did not pan out how you wanted him to last season. He was injured for a couple games, and he just was kind of underwhelming for how high you drafted him for last draft. So I gotta be a Sean Payton and stick with my gut. JJ McCarthy at number 12. He's seen it all along. I'm gonna stick with Terrion Arnold at 15.
Okay, I like that.
I'm going to stick with it. I don't want to mess anything up. I think he's a good 15. Now, if they draft Quinion Mitchell, I won't be surprised. But let's go to 16. Okay. And this is the last pick for tonight. I know I've talked a lot. And this is one of the most interesting picks of what I have seen in this draft compared to our previous mock draft. Now, originally I had them picking Tyler Guyton, a tackle out of Oklahoma. And I got to think, well, a couple years back, they drafted Charles Cross, a tackle from Mississippi State, 9th overall. And then I saw that they had like a 20, I don't even remember how old he was, but he was in his 20s. On the other side of Charles Cross, he's a tackle. And I was like, do you draft another tackle? Is that something you want to do? Do you want to draft another tackle, or do you want to work on that interior line? And so I got to thinking, is there a center, a guard that it could be drafted this high? And there is. But he's not called a center, and he's not called a guard in this draft. A Seattle Seahawks fan commented on our previous mock draft and said, hey, we need to work on that interior line. And I said, actually, let me look into it. And I completely agree with them. They need to work on that interior line. But this next pick is going to throw you off because Tyler Guyton, he's a tackle, right? So with my new pick, they picked Troy Fautanu, tackle out of Washington. You're like, okay.
He was a left tackle, right? If I'm not mistaken, he was a left tackle.
I think so, a left tackle. And wait, Connie, you just said that the Seahawks don't draft a tackle with this pick. Why are you putting him up on there? Hold up. I did my research. I promise I'm not going to make a pick that's not educated. Let's look at Troy Fautanu. Let's look at his size, okay? Now, Troy Fautanu is small for a tackle. He's 6'4". That is like very small that's small for a tackle. His hands are 9.5 inches, small for a tackle. His weight, 317, low for a tackle. And his arms, small for a tackle. Like all these things are small for a tackle. 317, like all these things do not fit a starting tackle in the NFL. But 5.01 40 time. Super fast for a tackle. There's no tackles that have that 40 time. And his 10-yard split is a second, 1.71 seconds. Like fast for tackles. So this is what you do. This is what you do in Seattle. You draft Troy Fautanu. Because look, you have these tackles, right? And okay, maybe the tackle across from Charles Cross doesn't work out. You give Troy Fautanu a couple Happy Meals, you gain him a little bit of weight, and maybe he's a starting tackle. But this is what I think you do in Seattle. You make him lose a little bit of weight. He is completely fast enough to be a guard. 100%. He might be big in college for a tackle, but he is on the smaller side for a tackle in the NFL. So you make Troy Fautanu a guard in Seattle. And
Okay.
this is who Seattle picks at number 16. And that's going to be their next guard. And Jack agrees with me.
I actually agree with that. He could be a monster guard.
He could.
He could be a very very good guard, and it's not really, of course, the technique is a little bit different, because your kick step, you're not working on ends, you're actually working on three techniques and four techniques and five eyes. But I think he will be great. I think that transition, if you're going to make that move, you got to transition him the minute he gets to rookie minicamp.
He is almost the perfect weight for a guard in the NFL. Okay. And if we take a look at the highest rated guard right now, which is Cooper Beebe out of Kansas State, he weighs 322, which is just about perfect near for a guard. And he just about has the same kind of measurements: arm, hands, height, and 40. They're basically identical. And so Cooper Beebe might be the highest ranked guard in this draft class, but really it's Troy Fautanu out of Washington.
I like it.
And that's my first 16 picks.
You hell of a job. I may not agree with the 11, 12, and 13, but a hell of a job. But one of the things that's going to always be hard is to dictate what trades are going to take place. And you never know until the team is on the clock. And there's a team on the clock, and there's a possibility for you to trade up, and you have to give certain draft commodity and certain draft